I guess we're live. Hello.
What's up, everybody?
We have 2 mics, and there's, if you can do the math, there's 3 people there. So, happy, healthy hump day.
Yeah,
we got it. So, before we get going here.
The comedian got it.
We got it. We have to give a shout out, because I believe that's what we promised last time. Did we say shout out? Mm-hmm. Michelle Campbell. No, not Michelle Campbell. Who
Suzanne.
did? Suzanne Campbell. Suzanne Campbell. Michelle didn't get it. Suzanne did get it. You got the Healthy Hump Day. You win. Shout out to you today. So we are going to talk about the truths, not in the myths about yeast. People have different thoughts of what it is, what it isn't, how to fix it. Just stop eating sugar. It goes away. Put tea tree oil on it, what it really does. So let's get into it.
Okay.
Handle it.
This is going to be extra fun today. We got all 3 of us. You never know what's going to happen. I think to start off with, yeast is a lot more prevalent than I think that I was ever really aware of, and it causes a lot more stuff, or it's an underlying condition with some of the things that we see on a regular basis. So I'm going to start just giving you some of like the common symptoms that you can have if you have a yeast overgrowth or a yeast infection. So typically if you have a yeast overgrowth or a yeast infection, you're going to feel a lot of fatigue because there's physically a fungus growing inside your body. That's what yeast is. It's a fungus. Right. So it's going to kind of drain some of your energy. It's going to steal some of your nutrients. So fatigue is a really big symptom of that. Now that's kind of ambiguous because almost everything we talk about, fatigue is a number 1 symptom. And I think you'll start realizing that as we kind of go through some of these symptoms, it just overlaps with so many other things that once you get diagnosed with one thing, they kind of stop looking. And I think that they miss the whole yeast piece altogether when it's something that you definitely have to take care of to really get fully well. So fatigue is a big one. Brain fog is a huge one. People with yeast overgrowth get a lot of brain fog. Feel like it's very hard to manage stress, very hard to multitask. You just can't find your words. That's really typical of having a yeast overgrowth, as well as some bloating and a lot of gas. Those things come all the time with the yeast overgrowth. So if you bloat or feel really gassy after you eat, that is definitely an indication that you could have some yeast overgrowth. And it also causes a lot of chronic pain because that yeast, any fungus, likes to get into kind of warm, dark places. That's where they like to live. So they'll go into I know, it's gross to think about.
Moist. Oh, come on, we got to say the word moist.
I was going to say that.
People hate that word. Anyways, it gets into...
Hey, Dr. Patrick.
What's up, Dr. Flynn?
I digress. We should get back to the topic at hand, people. We're not going to get anything learned with these 2. I was actually, if you watch their turmeric talk, I was actually kind of laughing. It's like one of the first ones the 2 of them have done together. I was like, you guys didn't even talk about turmeric. It's like it was the whole purpose of the video, and there was no information given. So I've come back in to kind of wrangle it in and see how we can get this. So yes, it goes into those joints. So it gets in your small joints. Your hands are aching, your shoulders hurt, your neck hurt, your knees hurt. That's something that happens a lot of times when you have a yeast overgrowth. And it can even cause things like ear infections or feeling like your ears are full, because that's a perfect place for yeast to want to get into in those dark ear canals. And then just a kind of thing that you can look at to see if maybe you do have yeast. If you have a white coating on your tongue, that's a pretty big sign that you probably have some yeast overgrowth, and it doesn't just stay in your mouth. So if it's on your tongue, you can bet that it's in your GI and it's in your tissues and it's in all of those other areas. So those are just some general things that you can look at to think, hey, maybe I start to have some yeast type issues. But again, I mean, we do a lot of stool samples, and how often would you say it comes back on a stool sample for people?
I mean, it's a lot more common than you would think. That is for sure.
I'd say 70% of people probably have some type of yeast strain, and then they just don't really know how to get rid of it properly. So that's the next thing I want to talk about. We'll pass it to you. Just what people think that they're supposed to do versus what you really need to do to get rid of yeast. And it's not as simple as just doing a quick cleanse or changing your diet. You've got to be really intentional with something like yeast.
Yeah, I'll let Dr. Miller handle that. But, and when you think of yeast, a lot of people just think, like vaginal yeast, vaginal infections. It's more than that. I said it likes to go to moist areas, and so diabetics, we see a lot of people with diabetics that have yeast issues because, again, they go to those warm, moist areas, and unfortunately, you got warm, moist areas, and it might be in different spots behind your legs, under your stomach, and so that's there. But it's not just getting rid of eating no grain and eating no sugar. That's a part of it, and that things has to be addressed. We talk about diet a lot, like grains and sugars literally feed yeast, right? And so you do have to cut that and change your diet, but go ahead and take off on some yeast stuff. We were at a seminar with the Wellness Way, and we just learned so much this weekend, and he was able to take some notes and bring it to you guys.
Yeah, so there's different ways we want to fight yeast. So again, yeast is naturally found in our body. It's essential for our microbiome. And so it's a problem when it becomes overgrown, right? And so, immune system function. Obviously, you want to pay huge attention to your immune system because that's the system inside of our body. And 80% of it's in our gut, right there, where a lot of this starts to overgrow. And so you want to make sure your immune system functioning optimally so that it can keep that under control. Some dietary things, obviously, you want to stay away from the sugar because the sugar is going to feed that yeast. We use a lot of different herbs, to combat the yeast overgrowth. The cool thing about the type of testing that we do is they will tell us what types of herbs, to use against these yeasts. Now, Saccharomyces boulardii is one of the non-pathogenic strains of yeast, and that's actually very beneficial for us. And so as long as that particular yeast isn't overgrowing in your system, and again, that's why it's so important that instead of just doing general things to try to fight the yeast, we want to run a stool test to find exactly what strain it is that you're dealing with. A lot of people blame everything on Candida,
right.
But there's over 1,500 strains of yeast out there.
Right.
Candida, there's 20 different strains of Candida. So again, you need to know exactly what we're dealing with in order to fight these infections. But we do use the Boulardii strand in order to combat the other strands and kill off the extra yeast overgrowth. So
you're saying that probiotics are really good for taking care of yeast?
And again,
probiotic?
Probiotics can be beneficial, because a lot of times when the yeast overgrows, it kind of, sometimes your body will lay down extra probiotics, extra bacteria in your body. And so if you have too much of that bacteria, you don't want to give yourself more bacteria, right? So again, there's so many different variables. You have to test to find out exactly what the impact it's having on your body.
Yeah, huge. And I think that's the thing is when people think of Candida or even like a bacterial overgrowth, and you'll even read a lot of these articles in these books, and it's like wipe out the bad and then rebuild the good and make a few dietary changes, and it's just not that easy, right? You don't know what really wipes it out if you're not testing to know that it's fully gone by the end of it, if you're not doing several different pieces to make sure that you're actually healing the gut lining and the other tissues and getting out of your body, it's going to keep coming back. That's the tricky thing about yeast. If you leave a little bit in there, you're going to fuel it, and in times of stress, hormone imbalance, you have too much sugar, weight gain, it's going to come right back. So you really want to make sure you do it right when you're suffering with that.
Yep. And so let's talk a little bit about, because a lot of patients, what we see on our food allergies all the time, right, is the baker's yeast and the brewer's yeast.
Right, yeah.
And so, we learned a lot about that this weekend, and it seems like the more you learn about these type of things, it's kind of the dumber you feel because there's so much information.
Sure.
But the big difference is baker's yeast, brewer's yeast, nutritional yeast, and they're all the same strain. The big differences between them is, are they active, are they inactive, and really what fuels them, right? Yeah. And so, the baker's yeast is more of an active yeast, which is going to give the rising, have that rising effect on, on the breads or whatever you put it in. And again, when it comes to baker's yeast, there's different kinds of baker's yeast. There's, the fresh, the dry, the rapid rise, right? There's all these different ones, and that's just more convenience. But again, it's an active yeast. The brewer's yeast is more of an inactive yeast, and that's going to feed more off of sugar, molasses, right? And that's kind of it's what they're using to make the grains.
Right.
Nutritional yeast is it actually has nutritional benefits. It is an inactive yeast. That's the stuff that you'll. I've never heard of this before, but I guess people like it on their popcorn and things like that.
It's
like a cheese type taste. There's just so many different types of yeast and so much information out there to know about.
So are you saying if you have a yeast overgrowth, you should avoid those things?
I would imagine you should.
Okay.
So the answer is yes. Yeah. And it's amazing because we do a lot of food allergy testing on patients, and one of the big things, and it's actually both of those things, I see it on almost darn near everybody has that positive of baker's and brewer's yeast. And then, there's people that just like to, enjoy a glass of wine or like a beer at night, or a couple beers and a couple glasses of wine at night. But if you have those allergies, in order to truly fix and heal your gut and avoid leaky guts and things like that, you truly need to, Courtney Mosley, avoid all of it in order to heal you. So then that takes time.
Yep, and whether it's a plus one, plus two, plus three, plus four.
Words.
Yeah, you've got to like completely avoid them. We got patients, and guys, when you first start, just had a patient this morning. She came back. She got like 35 different food allergies, and she came in this morning, and she's 2 weeks in. Last week alone, she's lost 7 pounds. Energy levels are up. Pain is like half of what it was, but she's still doing a couple foods. So, I mean, I didn't, browbeat her like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you're doing those foods. I mean, you're making great strides. Right. We don't expect you to be perfect day one. But again, to get the best results at the end of the day, we can't do the foods once a week, especially if you have an IgG sensitivity, right? Because, guys, these are sensitivities that could take up to 6 weeks for your body to react. Yeah. And so if you're doing it 3 times in those 6 weeks, it's just not going to give your gut that chance to really get healed up. So
let's talk about some risk factors. So are you probably susceptible to yeast? Let's go through a few of the things that would lend to more of a yeast overgrowth. So one of the biggest ones is repeat antibiotic use. And actually the new research shows that even just 1 round of antibiotic use will absolutely wreck up your gut microbiome. So if you've had to, maybe you were in a situation that you really felt you had to do those antibiotics, you've got to make sure now that you're testing to see what kind of damage that did and making sure we take care of that.
So why does the antibiotic, what's it do to your system to make it?
Well, because it's killing off, so fungus, yeast, like Candida or any of those other strains, they're opportunistic, right? They can only live in an environment that allows them to grow. So when you're on an antibiotic and it wipes out all of your good flora, you're literally leaving like this open house for yeast and fungus and bacteria and parasites to come in and just kind of have their way with it. So once you've killed off the bad stuff, then all these other things are going to, or the good stuff, the other things are going to come in. So you just have to be careful with that. And just taking a probiotic or eating yogurt while you're on an antibiotic does not do it. You really have to go in and fix the damage that it does. So if you've had any rounds of antibiotics ever in your life, including at birth, just be looking for your gut symptoms. Look at a stool sample, look at your food allergies, and just get those things checked and fixed now, even if you don't think that you have symptoms of them yet, because you probably do. And another medication, this was surprising to me, birth control. Birth control, I believe the stat gives you about a 50% higher chance of having yeast overgrowth if you've been on birth control for more than 30 days. So I know people, they come in, they're on it for 10, 15, 20 years. You can just about bet at that point that you have some yeast overgrowth. Absolutely. So looking at those types of things. Yep. If you're somebody that craves sugar a lot, or you eat and you still feel like you're not satisfied, that's a good indication that you probably have some yeast overgrowth as well. If you've had a lot of weight gain in the past, that's another one that's going to create the environment to be able to grow a lot more yeast. Do you have any other things that you would...
So obviously diabetics, right? Yeah, because you've got so much extra sugar in your system. And again, the sugar feeds the yeast. Guys, that's why we love the Swiss watch principle, right? And so you've got all these gears in our body. And an antibiotic, a steroid, like these type of things that ruin your gut, they may be good for an infection, but these drugs aren't smart. They don't have brains. They get in, it's a chemical. You put it in your body and it works. Yeah. So it may be good for this gear, but you throw off that gear and now it's going to affect the rest of your body, right? Yeah. And so, with those type of things, that's why we like to use more natural antibiotics, natural antifungus, natural antiviral stuff, because it doesn't go in and kill the good bacteria. Right. It's only going to have effect on the bad bacteria. Yep. And so, there's just so many different ways to get rid of infections. I mean, our kids get sick. Right. They get infections, they get different things, but yet we have 3 kids together. So while we're on that topic, let's just clarify, because we've been doing these healthy hump days for quite some time, and for a long time, Dr. Justin, bless his heart, he's shy, as you guys know. But he didn't, we had to really kind of coax him into getting behind the camera. So for the longest, it was Dr. Shannon and I doing these lives, and everybody thought Dr. Shannon and I were married. And so Dr. Shannon and I are not married. Sometimes she's my wife here at the office and keeping me in line and organized. But Dr. Justin and Dr. Shannon, they are married. Amanda, come here real quick.
And
Get
then
on camera.
Dawn's wife also works in our office.
She's our Nancy behind the camera.
So this is
hi,
my
Nancy,
wife,
hi,
Amanda.
Debbie.
It'd never be as good as Nancy.
That's true. And if you remember, we did a live on Easter on sugar one day and stuff like that. So yeah, we are a couple. This is a couple. But I got thrown off. What was I talking about?
I don't know. But
I think you were
one
done.
other thing was corticosteroids, and so you talked about antibiotics, talked about birth control. But corticosteroids play a really big role in weakening your immune system, weakening your gut lining, and lead to feeding yeast as well. Yep. And so yeah.
I want to say a couple highs. We've got lots of people watching. So we have Heather. Hi, Miss Heather. Dr. Patrick and Brandon. We have Brianna. We have Debbie McCaslin. Hi, Debbie.
Miss Debbie.
We have Ryan. We have Minna Miller.
Amanda's watching.
We have Ashlyn.
Hey.
We have Belva. We got all kinds of people on today.
Awesome.
Thanks for tuning in. I hope you guys are getting something out of this.
That's
yes,
awesome.
I love it.
Make sure you share it. Make sure you like it. Make sure you post comments. Comments. You guys have questions, we'll find answers for you. So just make sure you post those things. Tag somebody that you know has yeast or wants to know more about this, and just let us know what we can continue to do to help you guys out.
So let's end this with, I don't think we've given them any practical steps or tell them what to do if they think they need yeast.
Because I had a patient ask me this yesterday about red yeast rice, right? It's a big one. Everybody, it's like, oh, red yeast rice, red rice yeast, something like that. Yeah. But it's, the theory is it can help with your cholesterol levels and things like this. It is a grain, right? Yep. And so, that is the last thing that I would try to get.
Especially since there's so many others. That's the thing. Right. People kind of go to that one because it's been talked about a lot, but
especially those that are like the vegans that don't want to do fish and things like that. They'll try to do this, but it's a grain. It's going to be inflammatory. It can be harmful to the kidneys and to the liver. So really would prefer people to stay away from that option.
Absolutely. So let me give you 3 just kind of practical tips if you're somebody who's maybe not a patient of ours and you want to know what to do if you think or that you have yeast. My 2 favorite things that kind of help kill off yeast, and again, this is different for everybody. We love our testing because we can see on there in your body for your strain what works the best. But just in general, the ones I see come back quite often that are potent to kill those off. One is coconut oil. Caprylic acid is great for an antifungal, which is what yeast is. So 1 to 4 tablespoons of coconut a day. You can put it in a warm beverage, drink it in coffee, you can put it in a smoothie, you can do it with your food, you can eat it by the spoonful, but 1 to 4 tablespoons a day of coconut oil is great to help kind of calm down that yeast overgrowth. Yep. And then oregano oil is awesome. Now I say that with a little bit of a disclaimer because that is one of the main things I also see come back on food allergy lists. So that's why I don't always want you just running to the store and getting some different, herbs and oils and stuff because you don't know if your body is allergic to that or not. But oregano oil, just as an herb, is fantastic to break down the cell wall of that yeast, to really kill it off and to help it from stop populating. Yep. So coconut oil and oregano oil are great. And then watching all of your carbs. We talk about the nutrition and the sugars, but it includes your starchy foods. Absolutely. Our recommendation if you have a yeast overgrowth is 50 grams or under of carbs per day. So even looking at something like a sweet potato has typically about 25 grams of carbs. So if you're having that and some broccoli and a few other things, you're going to hit that 50 grams of carbs quite quickly. Now, we're not always that strict on carbs. We don't count macros all the time, but yeast is one of those circumstances that I would say you'd want to be much more mindful of your carb intake.
Yeah, tea tree oil.
Tea tree oil is great too. There's so many others. I mean, we have 15 different things that we use for it. I think those are the easiest ones that you probably have at home or you have with you. Colloidal silver I use all the time. That's probably the first thing I'll go to because it does a lot of other things for bacteria as well.
And just because it's so hard to combat this. I mean, we always have a multi-pronged approach. We're not going to just do diet. We're not going to just do herbs. We're not just going to do adjustments to stimulate the immune system. We're going to do all of these things to make sure that we get the best result at the end of the day.
So true. Yep. So if they think that they have yeast overgrowth, they have brain fog, they have joint pain, they have, just a side note, yeast and thyroid issues are very interconnected because, again, yeast likes those kind of areas. The thyroid tissue is the perfect breeding ground for yeast, too. It's moist and dark. Think of yeast, think of moist and dark in all those areas.
And when you start to kill these off as well, a lot of patients, and you're not going to feel good, right? Because these little buggers, when you kill them, their cell walls become permeable and all those toxins are released into you.
Absolutely.
So headaches and fatigue and body aches.
Skin outbreaks. It's going to come out from everywhere. And I tell everyone, this is my motto, it is better out than in. And I don't care how it's getting out, like I want it out. But I'm not surprised by anything anymore. This is happening. Yep. This is happening. Probably. I mean, things happen when you start to leave your body.
And I mean, it's just a good thing. It's like doing detox. You don't feel anything from the detox. Yeah, it's not working.
It's not. Or you're not really doing it. Yeah. You're cheating too often because you should feel it. All right. Tell them what to do. They think that they have yeast. They want to get their gut checked. They want to get this taken care of. What do they do?
Don't guess. Get tested.
We test. We don't guess.
That's right.
Yeah, so that's it. That's how it says. But yeah, you got to get tested. Stool test, and food allergy test. Those are kind of the go-to things, and that's what we recommend you get doing. And you can do that anywhere. You don't have to be here or there. I mean, we can show you how to order the labs yourselves, or we can send you kits or whatever. Doesn't matter where you are. But I mean, the important thing is get tested. Don't guess on what's going on with your health. So.
Yep, and that's something we offer. If you guys don't know that, we work remotely with patients all over the country, and we work with people right here in town. So if you are, thinking that you have some stuff going on with your gut and you want some more help, we always offer our first 15 minutes of time totally free, no obligation, just to have a chat, a conversation, and see what the next best steps are for you. So we'll leave some links in the comments of how you can set yourself up for one of those calls too. So we look forward to seeing you next Wednesday. Happy, healthy. Oh shoot, I messed it up. I never mess it up. Happy Healthy Hump Day. We'll see you guys next week.
Bye, guys.